Okay, good morning, everyone. After a 4-week break, back to Sanhedrin. Um, okay, before I put the Gemarah up on the screen, who can remember what we were even talking about? Lots of shakings of heads here.
Probably something to do with kings, because we've been doing that for quite a while.
Okay, you're absolutely right, Julia. We were talking about kings. Anybody else want to try and narrow that down a little, what we were talking about? I'll give you a clue. It was X-rated.
Rabbi Yochanan.
We were talking, no, I don't think about Rabbi Yochanan. What were we
No, we
talking
haven't
about?
got to him.
No,
Okay.
I think we were talking about King David being cold in his
Yes,
final years, and they had a bed
Uh,
warmer,
mm.
and
correct.
and she was I don't know, but he had to bring back Bathsheba to prove to the bed warmer that he was not impotent.
Correct. Well done, Jeffrey.
Good.
Well done, Jeffrey. That's exactly where we were up to.
Mm.
Do you remember the name of the bed warmer?
No, I can't remember that, but
The bed warmer.
it was an interesting thing because I think one of the sons wanted to marry her.
Very, very good, Jeffrey. Excellent, excellent. The bed warmer's name was Avishag. Okay. And she was brought in to warm King David because he was cold at the end of his life. And the Gemarah that we were doing was that this Avishag was a little bit forward. And she said to the king, "Come on, marry me." And he says, "I can't marry you." Why can't he marry you? Why could he not marry her?
He already
Because he
had
had
a
18
sufficient
wives.
number of wives.
He already had 18 wives. See how much you've learned in all these years, right? We know that a king can only have 18 wives, and we know that from King David. Well done, everyone. So, he can't marry her because he's already got 18 wives. So, what does she say to him?
I think he called for Bathsheba.
Oh, wait. Before he called for Bathsheba, what did she say to him when he said, "I can't marry you, I've already got 18
Oh,
wives"?
that's rubbish, she said.
That's right. She says, "No, I'm not buying that." She says, "You're not able to consummate a marriage." Um, and so he says, "I'll show you." So he calls for Bathsheba, correct? And then I won't ask you to go into the details, Jeffrey, but
No, but it's very interesting because at that point, Bathsheba, we've had to remind her that her son was the heir and
that
not.
was a bit later. That was a little bit later.
Yeah.
But I think the two things are connected because he calls for Bathsheba. Let me put the Gemarah on the screen for you now. Very impressed, Jeffrey. Very impressed that you remembered all that for 4 weeks. Okay, there is the Gemarah on the screen for you. If Michael is on page 130, if you're looking in your Gemarah. Over here. So Amra lay. She said to him, Avishag said to him, "Chasrei leganava, nafshei lishlomo nakit." When the thief is lacking what to steal, he makes himself like a man of peace. In other words, when there's nothing to steal, then he comes over as a big tzaddik. And what she was saying was that since King David was physically unable to engage in intercourse, as Rav Steinsaltz nicely puts it, he devised an excuse not to marry her. Amalahu, he said to his attendants, "Kiruli la Bathsheba, bring Bathsheba to me." Right? Obviously, Bathsheba was his favorite wife. We know that from what we've been learning in Tanakh, that he was very partial to Bathsheba. Even at the end of his life, it would appear. Uchtiv v'tavo Bathsheba el hamelech hachadra. And it says that Bathsheba came into the king's inner chamber. And this was, as Jeffrey has said, the story here is the next story on is the promise that Bathsheba reminds David that he had made to make Shlomo the king. So the Gemarah uses this word hachadra into the inner chamber. We know what the word cheder means, don't we?
Room.
A room, right? It also has other connotations, doesn't it? Cheder. You go to cheder, it means you go to, Sunday school or whatever. Why did they call it?
It also means you can go.
Yeah. We'll come to that in a minute. But cheder that we all went to, not that some of us went. Cheder that we all went to was called cheder. What was it? That was your
Learning school.
Learning school, right? And why was it called cheder?
It was in a room.
Because he sat in a room with the teacher. Yeah, that was why it was called. Did you ever think why it was called cheder? Did you ever cross your mind why it was called cheder? Because what happened was, all the kids used to go to this one place, like a school room, and the teacher would teach them in this schoolroom, and it was called cheder because where are you going? I'm going to the cheder. I'm going to the room where the teacher is, and that's why it was called cheder. Now, Jeffrey quite rightly points out that there is an expression to say, and Jackie obviously knows that expression.
Yes.
Well, that if you go to cheder or you sit in cheder, what does it mean?
You've got plenty of time on your hands.
What does it mean?
You go to prison.
You go to prison. And why did the lags who made that up, who called prison cheder, why did they call it cheder?
Because they were stuck in a room.
You're stuck in one room. You're in a cell. You're in one room. So you're in cheder. So that's the sort of slang Yiddish word for prison is cheder. Anyway, in Tanakh, hachadra, that we've got the word here, hachadra. Remember, we're quoting Tanakh here. We're quoting Malachim Aleph. That hachadra means the inner chamber. So, for example, when Queen Esther goes to the inner courtyard of the king, we're talking about chadra. It's the inner chamber. And what's in the inner chamber?
The bed.
Bedroom.
The bedroom. Right, the bedroom. So when it says V'tavo Bathsheba el hamelech hachadra, what do we need to be taught that word for? If it had just said V'tavo Bathsheba el hamelech, Bathsheba came to the king, we'd understand. She came to the king. She discussed the succession of the throne to Shlomo. Why do we need to hear that word hachadra? Look how careful with the language Chazal were. They see a word there that you and I would just make, doesn't make any impression on us. They said, "Oh, wait a minute, that word is a bit superfluous. We don't really need that word." And so Michael's shaking his head. So we're going to.
It's not superfluous. It's obvious.
Well, it's not superfluous from the Gemarah, but from the Tanakh, it's superfluous. Let me take you to the Tanakh and let's have a look. Kings, Malachim Aleph, chapter 1. Let me take you there. Malachim Aleph, chapter 1. Malachim Aleph, chapter 1. There we go. Malachim Aleph, chapter 1. Right. So this is the story. David was old. They got Avishag to come and warm him up. And at the same time, Adoniyahu crowns himself king. Natan comes to Bathsheba, verse 11. Natan comes to Bathsheba and says, you've heard that Adoniyahu has, made himself king. You better go and sort this out with the king, because otherwise we're in trouble. Come to the king and say to him, surely you, my lord the king, did swear to your mate, saying, Solomon, your son, will reign after me. Now, why is Adoniyahu reigning? Right? And then Natan says, while you're in there talking with the king, I'll come in and corroborate your story. Right. Now, verse 15, Jeffrey, on the screen.
And Bathsheba came in unto the king unto the chamber.
Stop
And the
there.
king was
Stop there. Stop there. Stop there. Michael Kraus, if it had just said, and Bathsheba came in unto the king, why would you would not say to me, wait a minute, why didn't it say she came into the inner chamber? So from this story, that word is superfluous. We don't need to know that this was the inner chamber. She came to the king to talk to him. Now, the Gemarah, you're quite right that as far as the Gemarah is concerned, the Gemarah spots this superfluity. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Superfluity here. I like that. The Gemarah spots this and says, hang on a minute, this is a bit of a strange verse. And Bathsheba came unto the king into the chamber, and the king was very old, and Avishag the Shunammitess ministered the king. What's that got to do with anything? What's she doing there? This is nothing to do with her. This is about Bathsheba and the king and Shlomo and Natan. In the middle of everything, Avishag's there. What's she got to do with anything? Why are we being told she's there? So the Gemarah sniffs something going on here, sniffs it all up. Let's go back to the Gemarah. And so this sniffs this Chadra. She's in the inner chamber. And not only is she in the inner chamber, the bed warmer's there. Abishag's there doing what she's meant to be doing. And so the Gemarah picks up on this and says, that sticks out like a sore thumb. Doesn't make sense, that pasuk. Must be hinting to something else. So they say, Amarav Yud Amarav. And this is where we ended last time. We ended with this sort of guzma, this sort of, what's the word in English? No. This hyperbole, this sort of exaggeration. That's the word I'm saying. Amarav Yud Amarav, but oto sha'a, at that time, kinecha Bathsheba bishlosh esrei mapot. Bathsheba wiped herself with 13 cloths. Why 13? Because if we go back to the pasuk over there, verse 15, count the number of words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 words in the pasuk. So the Gemarah says that those 13 words indicate that she engaged in intercourse with the King David 13 times. Now, that was to show Avishag that he was not impotent, as Jeffrey had said. We asked the question at the end, well, what was she doing there watching? And we said right at the end of the last year that probably this was exaggeration, and probably if it did happen even once, she was probably sent out and wasn't entitled to watch the fun. But this is the point here. So that's where we ended up last time. We ended up last time with that King David is certainly not impotent. And so we remain with the question. Avishag says, marry me. And he says, I can't. She says, you can't because you can't. And he says, I can, and I'll prove it. And he did. So why didn't he marry her? We're back to the original reason. Right? One sec, Jackie, just finish this sentence. We're back to the original reason, which was that
he had
the king
the
can't
correct
marry
number of
more than
wives.
18 women.
he's got 18 wives. And so we're now back to the original question. Why didn't he divorce one of those wives, one of the 18? Plenty to go by. Okay, it wasn't going to be Bathsheba. He liked her a lot. Must be one of those 18 he wasn't that keen on. Could have got rid of her and married Avishag. So what we're going to do in a minute when Jackie's had his say is we're going to go on and answer that question, why David did not divorce one of his wives in order to marry Avishag. I mean, to me, the answer's obvious. It's not what the Gemarah says, but to me, he didn't want to marry her. Full stop. End of. But that doesn't seem to be what the Gemarah takes on board here. But we'll come to that in a sec. Yes, Jackie.
I feel very sorry for this Abishag, because when he first went to King David as a bed warmer, Was she not promised something? Because once a woman goes in with a man, as we know from the Torah, and she lies with him, she's a scarlet woman. She can't marry anybody else. So it's not really fair.
Now that's a very good point, and I'm not going to answer it right now, Jackie, because the Gemarah is going to hint at least something connected to what you've just said. And when we've done that little bit of Gemarah where you'll see what I mean in a minute when we get to it,
okay,
then we'll address your question. But that's a fair question. I suppose the simple answer is she was a Shunammite. She'll do as she's told. And that's her job. She's a bed warmer, and that's the end of it. However, we will address it in a little bit more detail shortly. Okay, so that's where we were up to at the end of last shiur. And we're going to start over here now. Amar Rav Shemen bar Abba. So says Rav Shemen bar Abba. Bo, urei, come and see. Kama kashin gerushin. What's that word, kashin? What word do you see in there?
Kasher.
Yes, kasher, which means?
Kosher.
No.
Difficult.
Oh,
Correct. Kosher is with a kaf.
okay.
And with a resh at the end. It does have a shin, though, Michael. You're right about that. Kasher, kuf shin hey is what Julie is referring to, and it means hard or difficult. What question? What I gave you the answer there. What word do you know, which is related to that word? I'll give you a clue. There are 4 of them on Pesach. Questions. Kasha. Yeah, kasha. And what is a question? A question is a difficulty that you want answering. Yeah. So a kasha in Yiddish. In Aramaic, we see it very commonly in the Gemarah, and it is the word kushya. Kushya, same word. But something you see in modern Hebrew. How do we use the word kasher in modern Hebrew?
Difficult.
Hard. So if you want, for example, you want hard cheese as opposed to soft cheese, you would ask for gvina kasha, right? Hard. So hard or difficult. So Rav Shemen says, come and have a look. How hard, how severe, how difficult gerushin. What's gerushin? Divorce. How difficult divorce is. It's a difficult matter. The Gemarah says the Judaism considers divorce a serious matter. I think that if I was translating this loosely, if you had a living Gemarah, Michael, in that series of living Tanakh and living Torah, you would translate this as saying, come and see how severe and how serious a matter Judaism considers divorce. In other words, they don't take divorce lightly. Shaharei David Hamelech hitiru lo leyached. With regard to David, hitiru lo, they permitted him. They permitted him. Who permitted him? I suppose the Natan, the rabbis, whoever. It was permitted to him, let's say. Leyached. What's the root of that word?
Yachad, alone.
Yachad, yes, which means?
One.
Together.
Hot.
What is yachad? Biyachad
Together.
Together.
Together. And there is a halacha of being an isur, a forbidden act of being together with, let's say, a woman who is not permitted to you. What's that called?
Yichud.
Yichud, same word. Can you see that? Yichud. Yichud means to be together with somebody who you're not allowed to be together with. So hitiru lo leyached. They permitted him to be secluded with Avishag, right? Who he wasn't married to. Now then, let's just stop there because this is where Jackie's comment comes in a little bit. What is the isur, the forbiddenness? What is the forbidden act of yichud from the Torah? Not d'Rabbanan, d'Oraita, from the Torah. What is the act of yichud? Who is forbidden to be secluded with whom from the Torah?
Is it not a married woman and a married man, but not married to each other?
Yes, that is one example. Good. So,
Isn't
for
it
example,
betrothed?
somebody who is betrothed. Well, that somebody who is betrothed is effectively somebody else's wife, so that's in the same category. You are right. Who else?
A virgin.
Ah, okay. Answer: no. No. That's the point I was making. I was hoping somebody would say that because it's wrong, right?
Sorry.
So the answer is anybody who you are forbidden to marry. So all of those things.
Your mother, your sister, your
correct. Aunt. Well, not your mother because that's an exception. You're allowed to be with your mother, but you're not allowed to be with your aunt. You're certainly not allowed to be with your daughter-in-law. All of those things that we read on
Yom Kippur afternoon.
On Yom Kippur afternoon. Very good. All of those things that we read on Yom Kippur afternoon, that the expression in the laning is legalot ervata, to reveal their nakedness, meaning you can't be with them, you can't marry them. All the arayot, that is the word. Arayot means forbidden marriages. Okay, where do you know that word from? Where have you heard that word, arayot? You have all heard it at least once. Some of you more than once.
Oh, is it in the ketubah?
It's in the chuppah. In the chuppah.
Okay.
In the blessing that we say, or the Masada Kedushin that the rabbi says, he says, we bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who has permitted us the permitted marriages, and who has forbidden us the arayot, who has forbidden us the forbidden marriages. Va'asar lanu et ha'arayot. That sound a bit familiar to you? That's what the bracha says. Va'asar lanu et ha'arayot. It's been a long while. But you might have been to somebody else's chuppah recently, I don't know. But you probably didn't hear it because you were probably making too much noise and talking to the person next to you. If you were in Israel anyway. Anyway, so arayot, any of the arayot, you're not allowed, according to the Torah, you're not allowed to be secluded with. So you can't be secluded with another man's wife. You can't be secluded with your daughter-in-law and your mother-in-law and all of those folk that you're not allowed to marry. Okay? Now then, Jackie is right in a way that you are not allowed to be secluded with an unmarried woman. But that is not Dioraita. That is Dirabanan. That is a rabbinic law. They extended the Torah law to include not only the arayot, the forbidden marriages, because it's not forbidden to marry an unmarried woman, is it?
No.
Right? So why and when did the rabbis institute yichud for a man and an unmarried woman? And you know this because we've learnt it together.
Was it the rape?
The rape of
Tamar.
Tamar.
Yes, excellent. Well done, Julia and Michael. Let me take you back to the Gemarah in just actually one page back. It was a long time since we learned it, but we learned so slowly that it was actually only one page back. We go to 21b. Let me see if I can find it on the screen. Scroll up to 21b, and we'll have a look just before the Mishnah. There's the Mishnah. Right, it's just before that. Okay. There we go. There we go. So we had this whole discussion over here. Yichud dioraitahu. Yeah, have you got it on the screen there?
Yeah.
It's on page 124, if you want to turn back, Michael. Yichud dioraitahu. Yichud is seclusion with a woman forbidden by familial ties. In other words, all the arayot is prohibited by Torah law, dioraita. Damar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shimon yotzadak. How do we know that it is forbidden from the Torah? And he quotes this pasuk in Dvarim over here, Ki yisitecha achicha beni mecha. If your brother, the son, and the whole business, and then we did all that. And that's fine. So then it says, Ve'ein acher mityached im kol arayot shebetorah. But another individual may not be secluded with those. Therefore, yeah, okay. And then it asks the question, Ela Eima, hang on a minute, Gazru al Yichud dipnuya. Why did Rav earlier on say that Yichud was instituted in the time of King David? It wasn't. It's from the Torah. So then they say, Gazru al Yichud dipnuya. Pnuya. What is pnuya? Here he translates this as a single woman. Rather, they decreed against seclusion of a man with a single woman to prevent occurrences like that of Amnon and Tamar. So well done to you for getting that. Now, while we're on it, pnuya.
Available.
Available, correct. Where have you heard that, Avril?
Oh, I think it's just, is this seat available? It's used commonly in Hebrew.
Commonly. And it always I always feel a bit uncomfortable using this word. If you go to the bank and there's somebody there at the desk and doesn't have a customer in front of her, right? And you want to ask her, are you available? If you say, I feel uncomfortable saying at Pnuya.
Line.
Yeah, for obvious reasons, are you available? In Gemarah language, pnuya means available to, I'm not sure whether it has that my modern Hebrew what's the word, nuances is not good enough to know, and I've never tried it. I'm not going to try it out. I need to probably ask somebody. If somebody reminds me on Shabbos in Shul, Jeffrey, I'll ask Eitan Elias. He's about the only person I could ask that comfortably.
You could ask Herzl.
Yeah, I want a sensible answer.
I'll ask my grandson.
Yeah, so I feel uncomfortable asking at Pnuya. But anyway, you're right, Avril. In modern Hebrew, panui, which is the masculine form, Pnuya means available. So you could certainly say about, I don't know, a toilet booth or something that it's panui. But I'm not sure about asking a woman if she's a panuya. Anyway, so you're absolutely right. So this whole business of Amnon and Tamar was when Yichud came in. Now then, let me ask you this question. When did the episode of Amnon and Tamar occur? And where will you find it in Tanakh?
Well, it was certainly during King David's wartime period, and I think possibly he was away with his troops, and I may be wrong, but I think that's
okay. Well, I'm not sure that sure that you are right or wrong, but you're very much on the right lines. Yes, Sharon.
I thought it was toward the end of David's life when people were already jockeying for the kingship.
I don't
but
think
I
so.
could be wrong.
I don't think
Samuel.
so.
It's in Samuel. It's somewhere in Samuel.
I don't think you're right on that, Sharon, because
I'm probably wrong.
because Amnon was killed by his brother, and by the time King David was coming to the end of his life, Amnon had already been got rid of by Avshalom. Now, if I was to be asking you this question in a few weeks' time, you would know the answer, because it is the very next chapter that we are going to do on Sunday. We are going to start chapter 13 of Shmuel Bet, and that is actually the story of Amnon and Tamar. So, had you been very diligent and looked on in preparation for Sunday's shiur, you would have known the answer to that. But since you're like Michael and you don't want spoilers, you didn't do so and you didn't know. But we have just finished the story of Bathsheba and David, and it is the next story in Tanakh. It is the in chapter 13. So the point being, the opposite of what Sharon said. By the time of this episode, that David is with the bed warmer, the Amnon and Tamar episode has already happened sometime in the past, and therefore the halacha of Yichud with a single woman has already been instituted, and therefore the question of the Gemarah, of our Gemarah, let's go back to where we're up to, page 130, that over here, where are we? Thought we were on 130. It must be at the bottom. Yes, here we go, bottom of 130. There we go. That they allowed him to have Yichud. That question is still a question, because if Amnon and Tamar had not yet happened, then there would have been no Yichud for him to be permitted for. But we know Amnon and Tamar has already happened. The Gemarah in 21b that we've just looked at showed us that they instituted the halacha of Yichud for single women at that time. And so therefore this question of the Gemarah is a valid question. How come they permitted him to do this? Surely it would have been better for them to have allowed him to divorce one of these wives in order to marry Avishag, in order not to be transgress this this yichud, because there's no forbidden act in divorcing a wife, right? So why did they not say to him, well, you can't be with Avishag unless you divorce one of your wives and marry him?
Maybe they thought he was impotent, which is what where we started.
Maybe they did, but he showed them good and proper, didn't he? That he's not. So the question is, and this is what the Gemarah is saying. The Gemarah is saying, come and see how severe and how serious a matter divorce is, that they even allowed King David to be secluded with a single woman rather than tell him to get divorced. Do you understand where the Gemarah is coming from? The Gemarah is using this as an example to tell us what a bad thing divorce is. That's the beginning of this section of Gemarah. The concept of this Gemarah is about how serious a matter divorce is, okay, and how much protection, in a way, the Torah wants to give to a wife in order that she shouldn't be divorced.
As an aside, didn't King Solomon have lots of concubines, which would be slightly against this?
Yeah, and he was a naughty boy, wasn't he?
He was in breach.
He was in breach. That's right. So speaks the lawyer there.
So concubines really are a no-no, despite the fact that lots of Jewish kings had concubines.
Well, he had a lot more than 18 wives, that's for sure.
Yeah, he had 300 wives and 700 concubines, apparently.
He was not observant.
No. So it's a fair question, Michael. Do concubines count in the 18 wives? No, they don't. Concubines are separate. So your question is, well, why couldn't he just take Avishag as a concubine?
Because she didn't want it.
No, she wasn't interested in being a concubine.
Yeah, she wanted to be a wife.
She wanted to be a wife. So the answer is, yeah, he could have taken her as a concubine. So what? I mean, he clearly did not. He clearly did not want to be with Abishag, because instead of bringing back Sheva to prove his virility, what could he have done?
Had it with her.
Yeah, he could have said, right, I'm not marrying you, but I'll show you that I'm not impotent. You can be a concubine. But he didn't.
Can I ask you a question? I'm confused about. There's quite a lot of these. I thought one of the ways you can actually be married to somebody is by being secluded with them. So the fact that he was secluded with Abishag, didn't it mean they were married in some sort of way, even though there's only 18 wives he could have had?
Okay, so you're right that what's the word? In pure halachic terms, there are three ways that you can acquire a wife, and they are
giving something of value.
The chuppah?
Giving something of value, yeah. Chuppah itself, no. Chuppah itself is not one of them. But what goes on under the chuppah is two.
Witness.
One of them is giving something of value, the ring, for example. What's the second one?
Sign a document with two witnesses.
Correct, sign a document. What's that called in Hebrew?
The ketubah.
The ketubah, yes, and it's called shtar. Shtar is a document, okay? Shtar. And the third one, which Avril is alluding to, is not yichud.
Living over the brush.
It's intercourse.
Actual intercourse, correct. So the three ways that the Hebrew terms for this, in the halachic terms, is shtar, kesef, v'bia. Okay, shtar, the document, i.e. the ketubah. Kesef, something of value, the ring. And bia, intercourse. Now, what's yichud? Where does yichud come in, Avril?
Well, for the last bit of the
so
is evidence
there needs to be, as officially, and this occurs in the most stringent of situations when you have a wedding. You need two witnesses on the ketubah. Oh, wait a minute. So we said the halacha is actually you can acquire a wife through any one of those three things. But the actual halacha is that you need what?
Two witnesses in the ketubah.
You need all three. You need all three. You need a ketubah, you need a ring, and you need intercourse. We have two witnesses for the ketubah. They've signed it. We have two witnesses for the ring, because those two witnesses get called up to the chuppah, don't they? You know, Rabbi so-and-so and Rabbi so-and-so are called up to be witnesses to the chuppah, and up they come, and they watch the ring go on. First of all, before the ring goes on, they have to be shown the ring, and they have to be asked, is this valuable? Is this worth a pruta? Is it worth a penny? Right? And then you have to ask the chosen, is it yours? Right? Because you can't give something that isn't yours. And you've got to ask them, did you buy it with cash? Or did you buy it with a credit card? Because if you bought it with a credit card, it could be a problem because it's not yours yet. I remember when my second son, Akiva, got married, and his older brother, my oldest son, was Masada Kedushin. He did the wedding. He amused everybody under the chuppah by saying two things. He said, this is a very unusual chuppah, he says, because this is one of the very few times when the Orthodox rabbi who's doing the chuppah can kiss the mother of the chosen, because it was his mother. And the other thing that he said, when he asked Akiva, he said, with the ring, he said, is this yours? Yes. Did you buy it yourself? Yes. Did you pay for it with a credit card? No. Are you sure Dad didn't buy it for you? Because it has to be the chosens, because he has to give it. So the witnesses witness the value of the ring. They've heard that it belongs to the chosen, and they see the ring go on the finger. So there are witnesses to the ketubah, and there are witnesses to the kesef, to the ring. What about the intercourse?
Go in the yichud room.
Right. So what you're meant to do, a lot of modern weddings, they don't do this. They should, really. There needs to be what's called Eidei Yichud. The witnesses of the Yichud are meant to, theoretically, are meant to witness the intercourse in the same way as they're meant to witness the shtar and the kesef. They're meant to witness the intercourse. Obviously, that's not appropriate. So what they do is they witness the chosen and kala go into what is known as the
yichud room.
The yichud room, the room in which they are secluded together, right? Now, before they go in there, and I've done this myself, I've been an aide for the yichud, you have to go into the room and you have to ensure one thing. What do you have to ensure when you go in if you're a witness? Before the chosen and kala go in?
There has to be a bed there.
No, there doesn't have to be a bed.
Nobody else in the room.
Nobody else in the room, and a corollary to that, Avril.
It's possible for them to be secluded together.
Yeah, nobody can get in the room. So in other words, there isn't another door on the other side. You know, you can have a room with a door on both sides, right? Well, that's not a yichud room because somebody else, unless you've got witnesses on the other door as well. So you go into the room, you ensure that this room is secluded. It can't be, the chosen and kala can't get out and nobody else can get in. You then watch the chosen and kala go into the room and you stand guard at the door of the yichud room. For how long, Jackie?
20 minutes.
Oh, that's a long time. No. The answer is for as long as it takes.
I was always sure it was to have a cup of tea.
So the answer is the Eidei Yichud are meant to stand guard for as long as it takes for the chosen and kala to have had intercourse. Right? If you're 20 minutes, okay. I'm not going into it. The halacha is about 7 minutes. Okay. Oh. Okay. So if you are ever an aide for a yichud, you have to stand outside guard. After 7 minutes, you can assume that the act has taken place, and that is considered your edut, your witness, your testimony. Okay, you can then go away. Now, Julia said she thought it was to have a cup of tea and to break your fast because, Julia, that is not the purpose of the yichud room. Okay, it is usually what goes on in the yichud room. That is true. However, the purpose of the yichud room is so that the witnesses can come and say, we are witnesses that these two people have been meyached, they have been secluded in a place where nobody else could get in and they can't get out. So it is definitely yichud. And we assume, therefore, that the intercourse has taken place. And so, therefore, you have witnesses for all three things. Avril is right that, according to the strict Torah halacha, you only need one of these things. But yichud itself is not one of them, Avril. Yichud, the one thing that you would need is what you're meant to do in the yichud room, right? Not have a cup of tea. You know, if you sit in there and have a cup of tea and you haven't got a shtar and you haven't got a ring, then you're not married, right?
Yeah, no, I thought that back in the day that that the third thing would have counted. I didn't realize it was always you had to have all three. Back in you're saying back in the days of David HaMelech, they had to have the Adim and the something of value. They had to have all three.
No. What I'm saying is you are right. You are right, but yichud is not good enough. You actually have to have The bia. You have to have the bia.
Because I just assumed that they would have been married and that they transgressed the 18 rule.
Right. So presumably, when you take a pilegesh, right? When you take a concubine, presumably, and I've never done it, I've never had a concubine, but I'm assuming, I'll tell you a little story about that in a minute, not about me. But I'm assuming that if you take a concubine, you would make it clear to that concubine that this is an act of intercourse which does not constitute marriage, right? It would have to be, you would have to have consent for the marriage, right? And it doesn't just happen. Otherwise, you'd be automatically married to somebody you raped, which is not the case. So a pilegesh, let me tell you a story about a pilegesh. And this is a true story, which occurred, I don't know, 15 years ago. Elisheva, my wife, is a counselor, psychotherapist. And before we left Manchester, she was, by default, chief psychotherapist to all the Haredi marriage difficulties, let's put it that way. Right? She was the address that all the rabbis sent their difficult people to. So she had this couple, she had this guy, this fellow, and the wife only ever went to mikveh once every sort of 12 months, right? She would go to mikveh, get pregnant, and then would not go to mikveh again, and would not. So there would be no marital relations between this couple. Basically, she shut up shop, and that was it. And obviously, that was a difficult situation. And the fellow came to the rabbi, and this is how he referred him to Elisheva, and said he wants to take a pilegesh. This fellow doesn't want to divorce his wife, but he wants to have marital relations, and she's not forthcoming, and so he wants to take a pilegesh, and he wanted a psak from the Rav to allow him to take a pilegesh. And apparently, it could be done. It could be done. It would need, al pi halacha, it would need the consent of the wife, and various other conditions would need to be met. It would need the consent of the pilegesh as well. It was complicated, but it was quite interesting that such a thing, al pi halacha, I mean, it didn't. The rabbi, the Dayan said, "Don't be so ridiculous. You're not. That's not what we're going to do." But by the way, it is possible, but forget it, kind of thing. That was. I don't want you to think that the rabbi said this was a good thing to do. It wasn't. But interestingly, even today, al pi halacha, it could be done under various circumstances. So to go back to your question, it's clear that there is a situation where you can have intercourse with somebody and not be married to them. Okay. So that was your original question, Avra, which was a good question. Right. Okay. So where have we got to? We've got to the situation where the Gemarah is about to give us some proofs. As you know, the Gemarah doesn't just make statements that says something as bold as David HaMelech was allowed to have yichud with Avishag, and not allowed to get divorced because divorce is more serious even than having yichud. You can't just make that statement without backing it up with some scriptural proof. That's what the Gemarah is all about, isn't it? We've learned that over many years now, that the Gemarah always tries to find scriptural proof. So that's what we're going to go on to now. Just got about 5 minutes left, so we'll start it. And here we go. Amar Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says, Kol hamagaresh et ishto rishona. Anybody who divorces his first wife. Now, there is there's an N there. I wonder what that little N is referring to before I say what I was going to say. Here we go. the notes. Let's have a look what Rav Steinsaltz says. Some commentaries combine this statement with the previous one to explain why David did not divorce his wives, even though most of his wives obviously were not his first, which would not seem to render Rabbi Eliezer's statement irrelevant to David's story. Never thought of that. Nevertheless, these wives were virgins when he married them. Each one was like a first wife. Okay, so what that N is saying is something I didn't actually pick up on, but it's quite right. Rabbi Eliezer says anyone who divorces his first wife. Well, David could have divorced his second, third, fourth, or 18th wife, couldn't he? What Rabbi Eliezer, one sec, Sharon, what Rabbi Eliezer is saying, not necessarily true. So Rav Steinsaltz explains that they were all like his first wife because they were all virgins when he married them, except for Bathsheba, who we know wasn't a virgin. And she was especially beloved.
What about Abigail then?
And Abigail, who was already married.
Oh, that's also she also wasn't, but she was also especially beloved to him, wasn't she? We know that. Very good point. Well done, everyone. Okay, yes, Sharon.
My question is this, and it's probably because I don't remember having studied this ever. When you divorce, when he divorced, would his children lose their rights? What happens to the children of divorce in terms of inheritance and obligations?
No. The children are the children of the father. Irrespective of the status of the wife.
Okay. So divorce is made difficult for other reasons than the status of the children.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is interesting. Rabbi Eliezer is talking about his first wife. What I was going to say, which I thought maybe the note of Rav Steinsaltz was going to say, but she didn't, is that some of the Mefarshim speak about, they add in a word after this concerning anyone who divorces his first wife unfairly. In other words, they're not saying that if a marriage has broken down irretrievably for whatever reason, that you can never divorce a wife, because otherwise there would be a halacha that says you can never divorce, and that isn't the case. So remember what we said was kasher legerushin. It's a difficult matter. It's not saying it's a forbidden matter. The Gemarah is trying to prove how seriously Judaism takes divorce. And it means divorce, flippant divorce, if you like, divorce for no good reason. And that's important to qualify. It's not qualified here specifically, but if you look in the Mefarshim on this Gemarah, and the footnotes in the thingamajig, the art scroll that I've got here, do mention this. That's where I've picked it up from. That it's talking about a flippant or unfair or unwanted, unwarranted divorce. I think that's important that we say that. So,
Johnny, can I ask a question?
You can.
If this Rabbi Eliezer says he couldn't get divorced because all these 18 wives were like first wives because he married them, they were virgins, why did he need a bed warmer? He's got 18 wives there why did he need a bed warmer? What was wrong with them?
A very good question.
They were old. And she was a young girl.
They couldn't all be old. They couldn't get 18.
Well, they must have been, because Bathsheba was was she not the final one? I don't know. But they must have, he was an old man. His wives must have been all old as well.
Julia, if you managed it 13 times with Bathsheba,
well,
he couldn't be that old.
I think, Jackie, you've answered your own question, and Julia has answered it as well. And that is, and this is often what we do here when we're learning Gemarah. You ask a question and you turn the question on its head. Your question is, why did he need a bed warmer? Because he could have brought one of his wives. And the Gemarah would have said to you, that's a proof, Jackie. The proof is the fact that they brought him a bed warmer is a proof that they must have all been old. Okay. Because your question's a very good question. And the Gemarah's answer would be, you've answered your own question. It must have been that they were all old and not able to warm him up.
There's a difficulty there, because if the bed warmer, at least it implies at some stage she was warmed the bed, but they weren't involved in a relationship. So it's just as easy to have one of his older wives there to cuddle up to him and keep him warm.
Very good, Michael.
I don't know. Is a young person got more warmth to them than an old person? Old people get cold, don't they? You know, you see when you go out walking in Netanya, you'll still see now today at 20 odd degrees. You'll see the old folk there with their hats and the scarves and their coats on.
Like me.
When you get older, Jackie, you lose that warmth of your body.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah. It's a good point, though. I mean, these are all great questions, because what it demonstrates is that we are thinking like Gemarah Cop, right? We're thinking along the lines of how the Gemarah works, which is great, because we're sort of into the mode of learning. I love these questions. I think it's really, really encouraging. So we're out of time, but let's just to finish off, let's give you the first scriptural proof that Rabbi Eliezer brings about this divorce business, which is a bad thing to do unless you have to. He says, "Afilu mizbeach," even the altar, meaning the altar in the Bet Mikdash. Morid alav dema'ot. Even the altar brings down tears upon him. In other words, even the altar weeps for this situation of divorce. That's how bad it is. And he brings a proof from Malachi, which I happen to just have ready for you. Surprise, surprise. There it is, Malachi. Jeffrey, if you would just read those two psukim for us, and then we'll finish.
And the second thing you do to cover the altar of the Lord with tears, weeping and sighing, such that he will no longer turn to the offering, nor will he take anything willingly from your hand. And you will say, why? Because the Lord testified between you and the wife of your youth, that you dealt treacherously with her, and she is your companion and the wife of your covenant.
So you can see this. We'll go into this chapter of Malachi in some detail next time. But what you can see from these two psukim is verse 14 is saying, this is not good what you've done. The wife of your youth, and that's why Rabbi Eliezer says your first wife, you've dealt treacherously with her. And that's why the Mefarshim say what I said, which is this is not a divorce because it needs to be a divorce, because certain situations you need to have a divorce. This is a divorce where you've dealt treacherously with this wife, right? She's been your companion and you shouldn't have divorced her. And what Malachi is saying is, what you have done has covered the altar of the Lord with tears, weeping and sighing, such that he will no longer turn to your offerings. If you treat your wife badly and divorce her wrongly, says Malachi, the prophet Malachi, Hashem will not even turn to your offerings. So it's a very serious business. We'll stop there, and next time we will go and look at this chapter of Malachi in some detail, what it's all about, and why this comes here at this particular point, and then we'll return to the Gemarah. The Gemarah is going to give us a whole bunch more of psukim from all over the place. You can probably see on the screen here all of these things that I got ready to show you are all coming up in the Gemarah. So we've only got to the first one, and we only got to the first one right at the end. But that's pretty typical of our shiurim. But we did have an interesting discussion about lots of things. So any question on today? Yes, Sharon.
I'd just like to say something. We're hoping to be leaving the country for 3 weeks to go explore Jewish life in Morocco. And so I won't be here, but I will be listening to all of my Talmud friends on the recording when I can in between our excursions there. And I'll see you in May.
Well, we'll look forward to you coming back and telling us all about Morocco. Sounds fascinating. And we'll look forward to it. And we will try very hard to remember to record the shiurim for you.
Johnny,
Please. Everybody make sure he does, please.